I moved to Oklahoma, I had bought land. I bought 5 acres of land, and it was, as you can imagine, flat. There's a creek that goes in the back. It's like a winding creek. It's really cool, and there's some mature trees around the creek, and then of course a lot of poison ivy. A lot of poison ivy. We have to take that out every year as we're trying to keep it away. But we didn't have a house. So that's one of the things that I did is I built a house. Now, I myself did not build it, but I hired a builder. And so I wanted to think of emotional intelligence like building a house. There's a process to it. So most leaders are trying to install the beautiful fixtures and paint walls, pick out the paint colors without actually laying a proper foundation or framing. So I knew that, because even when you get really excited about the light fixtures and the paint colors, and I had 10 paint colors, and my builder's like, just wait. And I was like, okay, well, what about fixtures and all of these? Just wait. First thing we need to do is pick the elevation. We need to pick the style, because that will inform several other things. And so building your emotional intelligence is a lot like building a house. You have to do it strategically. You have to go through the steps, and you have to do it without, if you just start doing the final touches, the throwing paint on the wall, or trying to pick the, chandelier for the entryway or the dining room, then it's not actually going to give you the results that you want. And so I wanted to talk about today, because I have 5 dimensions of emotional intelligence. This is a 5-step system that actually works and is strategically built on each other in order to help you. It's why most leaders fail at emotional intelligence, because they just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall. So if you read the books on emotional intelligence, you've taken the assessments, you've attended workshops, but you feel like you're winging it as a leader, you're not broken. You're just building on unstable ground. And so that's one thing, is working through a framework. You get to build that foundation. You get to build the framing, and then all the outward appearances and your ability to put it into action takes place after you've built the foundation, not before. So I know that some of the problems that you're facing, some of the questions you may be asking yourself is that I know I need more emotional intelligence. I know that that's something I can grow in, but I don't know where to start. So you've tried reading books, you've taken the courses, and when you're under pressure, you still react the same way. And there's so much advice out there, and you don't have time. You don't have time to figure out what actually moves the needle. And so I wanted to talk about these 5 dimensions, because going through these systematically, and again, it's not a one and done, because we are constantly developing as a human, as a leader. And so but it is a foundation that you can take, and you can systematically go through and develop and build this emotional intelligence, which, as I've said before, this wave of the future, this information is not enough. This is what's going to be our strategic edge. The more we understand ourselves, the more we understand what our people need from us. And things that are not working when it comes to social emotional intelligence, EI, is random emotional intelligence tips that don't connect to your specific leadership style. All the books are fantastic. And if you don't understand your wiring, then they don't connect. And so you're wondering why it's not working. The surface level communication training, that breaks down immediately when there's any kind of pressure. So the surface level communication, going and I'm a big proponent of going to trainings and things, but then there's that step after that you need to take for yourself. And what's in it for me? What do I want to implement? What do I take away from this training and use it for myself? And I love doing this based on your core motivations. You don't just haphazardly take something. It's okay, based on what my focus already is, this is what will work, and this is what I can practice. And then also these generic self-awareness exercises that don't translate into better decision-making. You can take, the journals are great, and these generic exercises, but if you don't have a foundation to do these exercises, you're just saying what sounds good. You're not actually putting it into practice for yourself. And that that's one of the first things I do when I work with my clients is we find that wiring, we find those core motivations and values, because then you can build the better decision making on that. I've done several podcasts about that too. So if you're looking for how to make better decisions, like either like reach out to me and let's talk, because there is a way to make better decisions fast without trying to, like I love the book Atomic Habits, and there's so much in there, but I don't have time to read it and do it. So if you want just a quick, like, let's get down and dirty and like, let's figure out how to make better decisions for you, get on a call with me and let's talk about that, because there's the cost of overcompensating for bad decisions is way worse than it's so great nowadays because time goes so fast. Information flies. Like we just have to move so quickly that if we can build that foundation and build that solidly fast, once you have it, you won't need another decision-making foundation. Like you'll have it, you can develop, it can grow, but you won't need to build that foundation again. And so the other thing that's not working is trying to fix everything at once instead of understanding which dimension needs attention first. And so we're going to talk about the 5 dimensions. This is part of my Shine framework. These are the tools I use inside of Shine. And so and the Align Leader. So it's not that there's 3 different IPs, frameworks. It's all that they build together. It's just a matter of it helps me understand like what we're actually doing. And so let me tell you about the 5 dimensions first, and then we'll talk about each of them briefly. And so it's identity foundation. Then there's the growth architecture. Then there's leadership expression, which most people miss or they skip this one. And it's crucial. And I'll talk about that, why it's so important in a moment. And then there's strategic vision. And then there's sustainable success. And so this, like, think of this as a circle, because when you get to sustainable success, and actually you could start at any one of these depending on what you need. And it just goes in a circle because everyone they go into the next one, and one will add on to another and deepen the understanding of the other. But really the circle as a whole that helps you build this emotional intelligence. And why, as a leader, we work on it, and yet we still fail, or we feel like we're floundering when it comes to emotional intelligence and self-awareness. And so I don't know if you've seen my LinkedIn posts the last week and a half. I've got another week of them that I've written that I'm going to start posting again, but talking about it's mixing some of our core values, why we need each Enneagram type, and what they do for us. Because sometimes we forget that having diverse friends, diverse motivations in our friend group, in our teams, in our leadership, mentors, it actually helps us become a stronger leader and develop faster. And so I've been doing that. But the other aspect of it, the other days, I've been talking about the importance of emotional intelligence on your leadership, and how emotional intelligence and self-awareness are not the same, but they're both needed and they both play into each other. And so let's talk about these 5 dimensions of impact intelligence, these 5 core dimensions of like emotional intelligence. And I like to call it impact intelligence just because emotional intelligence without action, it's like, what's the point? And so it's the emotional intelligence impact that we're really looking for. So let's talk about dimension 1, the identity foundation. This is knowing who you are before you try to lead others. Most leaders skip this and wonder why their leadership feels performative. And so an example of this would be like a CEO who knows their core values, but makes decisions based on what the board expects, or instead of aligns with who they are. And they wonder why their leadership feels exhausting. So it's not that your decisions need to go against like the board or these expectations, but if you understand and you align your core values with it, the decisions are going to feel more aligned and easier. And you're also going to be able to explain why behind it, behind the why behind the why of what you're doing, to get them on board and get their buy-in, whether it's your teammate or whether it's, the people who work with you, people who you work for, people you answer to, your clients. when you have an identity foundation that's really strong, people will follow you simply because they want to be part of something. And so the next is the growth architect. So this is how you handle what triggers you and what energizes you. A lot of times we don't sit down and really like dive into what specifically triggers us. And then also as a leader, as a parent, as a spouse, as a friend, all the things, it's important that we understand what energizes us. And I've talked in other podcasts about the energy list, that how it even changes during the different seasons. And so it's something that you want to, when you discover that something that used to energize you now drains you, you want to make sure you are aware of that. And so leaders who master this don't get knocked off course by pressure. So an example of this would be, an executive who gets triggered every time someone questions their strategy in meetings. So someone always questions them, but instead of getting defensive, they learn to pause and ask, okay, what am I protecting here? And then that shifts the entire dynamic. That shifts the understanding, okay, why is this so important to me? So number 3. So this is the one that most leaders skip or don't intentionally develop. And this is where your internal clarity, so internal things, becomes your external influence. It's not just what you say, but how your presence shows up. And most leaders focus on the other dimensions, haphazardly, but don't develop this one. And so an example of this is, here's what most leaders miss is you can know your values, you can manage your triggers, and you can have a clear vision. But if you can't translate into how you show up in the room, none of it matters. This is about your presence, your communication patterns, and how you set boundaries. And so when I work with leaders on this, we actually talk about the importance of understanding your communication pattern and what boundaries do you need to set, good and protective ones. Ones that allow for your people to be part of it, the decisions, and then also just those protective ones that are, okay, this is my non-negotiables. So think about it here. No, you know that leader who seems scattered even when they're organized, or the one who says all the right things but still feels off. Maybe that's you. I know for a while that was me too. I can say the right thing, but there's still that something felt off. And they developed the other dimensions. But they never learned how their internal clarity translate into external influence. A leader I worked with could articulate their vision perfectly. They knew what their vision was in private. They could, in the course of the session, but it became a completely different person in board meetings. The way they showed up in board meetings did not reflect what we had been developing. And so this is where we dove into this leadership expression. So that way they were the same person. I just came back from Finland and 11-hour flight. And so I watched a lot of movies, and there was one, it was Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks. It was The Post. And it was talking about, it was talking about the news and whether the documents about Vietnam, whether they should be not leaked, but if they should be printed or not. But one of the things that I noticed is Meryl Streep, who is an incredibly confident person, when she was talking with her confidants, with her people, and they were, I think was it the Washington Post? I think it was the Washington Post. Don't quote me if I'm wrong, because again, many, many hours on the plane and many, many time zones. So I'm still catching up. But with that she was very confident, and she memorized the numbers, and here's the stats and the data. And then, because they were about to go public. And so she was, talking to potential investors, to get them on board. And all of that strength and that resolve that she had when she met with them, she saw it on her notes and she couldn't express it. So that's what I'm talking about, is in deep inside that it's there. You just don't know how to get it out. And so leaders assume that if they know themselves well enough, their leadership would automatically improve. Again, you can practice and practice and practice until you start taking actions. But there's a translation layer that most people never develop. And it's the difference between being self-aware and being strategically expressive with that awareness. It's putting your self-awareness into practice and translating it into actions, not just like deep inside your heart. So that's why that leadership expression is such an important dimension. And if you're not actively working on it, you're missing a big part of your genius there. And so dimension four, here we go, 2 more. Strategic vision. This is about leading from your calling, not just your calendar. The leaders with this dimension don't just manage, they inspire, they motivate, they are able to get their people on board, because not only have you worked out your vision, but you can express it and you can get other people's buy-in as well. And so here's an example of like a director works like 60-hour weeks, hitting every metric, but feels like they're not making the impact they were called to make. They're managing the task instead of leading from a deeper purpose. So with this strategic vision, it is, this is when you discover your purpose and your vision for yourself, for your work, for your family. You go through a process that like really get clear on all the things you know about yourself. Why are you here? Why is it important? And how do you lead from a deeper purpose? And I'm telling you, when you have this, your leadership can definitely, it feels lighter because you have the foundation and you know where you're going. You may not know exactly how you're going to get there. But again, that's where your people come in. If they can get on board and buy into the vision, then a lot of times their ideas and their the things that they bring help elevate and like deepen that. And so in the 5th dimension is sustainable success. So this is a framework that keeps it all working when life gets complex. So without this, everything you've built crumbles under real world pressure. There we go. This is one that we need to make sure we have things in place so that everything that we've already worked on stays and when there's a crisis. It is you're able to understand and you've worked through the foundation and you've built the foundation and it becomes part of you. And so an example of this would be a high performer builds an amazing team and culture, but then burns out because they never established systems and boundaries to maintain what they created. So you burn out because you're just go, 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 and realize that systems and processes and habits are actually the key to really good emotional intelligence. So they built it, but they couldn't sustain it because they didn't have those systems in place that they needed. And so that's why, systems, and habits and things are not super sexy, but they are so helpful. And there's a myth that if you systematize everything, it bleeds out, like it will choke out creativity. And that's actually not true. When you have systems in place and your brain can just go on autopilot with certain areas that just work, it actually gives you more energy and more space and margin for creativity, for coming out of finding that out of the box solution. And so let's talk about this here. Let's talk about this, let's do a reality check. Because you may be thinking, you may be Googling, you may be thinking I know I should be more self-aware. But how does it actually make me a better leader? How do I be a better leader? How do I build emotional intelligence? How do I how do I use the self-awareness that I have been developing? I know I should be more self-aware, but how does that actually make me a better leader? And you might be frustrated because you've invested in development, but you still feel reactive under pressure. This is why the leaders that I coach don't fail because they lack emotional intelligence. They fail because they try to develop it randomly instead of systematically. When you understand which dimension needs attention first, everything else accelerates. When you intentionally go through and you work on the different elements within these dimensions, then you can actually build a a foundation that is immovable, that's standable, that you can trust, and that you can have the confidence that when you need it, it's there. So I don't coach leaders that fail because of the lack of emotional intelligence. They fail because they try to randomly instead of systematically develop it. They don't take they will answer those generic self-awareness and emotional intelligence questions, but don't create a plan of how to use it and how to act on it. And so so this is why it's so important to systematically develop emotional intelligence. And this isn't just for your middle managers. This is at every level, because once we get to another level, a lot of times we forget and we're not aware of what's going on underneath. For example, if you are a high level leader and you are, say, a CEO, VP, and you have to make some really tight budget cuts, you have to let your people know that some of the systems that they've been using, you're going to have to let, like there's budget cuts, so we're going to have to cut some of those systems. So they're going to need to, the automations, they're going to need to do it themselves, or changing programs. So they are hearing about all these new changes. And then you're like, well, I'll see you guys in a week. I'm heading to my lake house for the weekend. So you just dropped a bomb on them about how they're going to have to work harder and there's a change. And then you're like, I'm going to head out. I'm going to go and do, and we all know leaders. We all know leaders like this. We all are. And it's not bad that you have a lake house or that your leader has a lake house. It's that awareness of that was not the right thing to say. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to do budget cuts. I'm going to take some tools away from you, but I'm going to go and I'm working on my new boat. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And so when you can see yourself with strategic clarity, and here's that Shine connection, here's that how it works, is you can't without the 5 dimensions. So this is why they're part of it. So most leaders think the self-awareness is just knowing their personality type or strength, but strategic clarity requires understanding of your identity foundation, your growth patterns, your leadership expression, your vision, and sustainable systems that make it together, all work together. So if you're leading a team and feeling like your emotional intelligence doesn't show up when you need it most, you're not lacking capability. You're lacking the systematic approach. And this is something that I can help you with. It's the roadmap that turns self-awareness into effective leadership, or leadership effectiveness, however you want to say it. And so are you ready? If you're ready to stop guessing about your leadership development and start building it systematically, building it faster, building it with more intention, and it's actually a lot easier, because if you know what works, all the other generic junk, you can just strip away. And so let's identify which of the 5 dimensions you need to start with first. Let's book your leadership strategy call. TamiMurrayCoaching.com/call, because emotional intelligence without a system is just good intentions. How many times do we have good intentions, but nothing actually happened? And though you may have read the books, high impact leaders understand how to take those elements from the book and then develop it systematically. Like you need to have a awareness, a foundation first. And then those other tips will help, because you'll know where to slide them in. You'll know what part of the framework, you know where your foundation, it needs to go. And so leadership presence isn't about charisma. It's about alignment across all 5 dimensions. So I want you to think about it. Like, which of these dimensions that we talked about, and we talked about identity foundation, growth architecture, leadership expression, strategic vision, and sustainable success. Which of these really are, which resonates with you most? And where do you feel stuck right now? By understanding this creates your self-awareness. It's that first step is once we can bring it to light, it loses its power over you. Once we know better, we can do better. So once you take a moment and instead of reading another book, sit and ask yourself, which of these dimensions resonate with where you feel stuck right now? All right. Like I said, get on a leadership strategy call with me, TamiMurrayCoaching.com/call, and let's talk about this. Let's start working through the framework. Let's get stop taking so much time and just, I mean, I love reading books, but it wasn't until I understood how to use the books and which one I'm like, ooh, this will never work for me because of this. Or I don't want to say never, because sometimes, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it won't work because of this, this, and this. However, this aspect, or how can I make it work for me? That's my favorite one is, okay, I love this concept. How can I make it work for me? So if you're ready to do that, get on a call with me. It's easy. It's fun. And it's crazy how fast you can make changes. I don't do therapy anymore, but I was working with a leader who we were talking about where his leadership habits came from. We were diving back into it, and he's like, man, we're not doing therapy. He's like, but I've made more progress in understanding myself and where I came from and where I need to go in these 3 sessions than I had of 5 years of therapy. 5 years of therapy. And he's like, no, these 3 sessions have helped me have more clarity and understanding of myself more than anything else. And that was just the beginning. We were just starting getting our work together. And so that's what you want, and you don't have a lot of time, and even it's worth the time, but you don't have to, it's not a long drawn out process. Like, we can get down and dirty. We can get to business quick with this process, with this framework. So if that's what you want, if you're ready and you want to dive in, let's do this thing. All right, friend. Thank you so much for tuning into a Leader's Purpose podcast. If you know a leader who wants to grow their self-awareness and emotional intelligence, they want to understand their core motivations and core values and their unique wiring, their inner driving forces, and they want to start building sustainable systems, share this podcast with them. Have them reach out to me and let's chat. But that would be really helpful for me. If you know of somebody who could benefit from this, it'd be really helpful for them too, because we want to grow. You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be listening. You wouldn't be a leader if you were just wanting to stay one note. So with that, friend, choose joy until joy chooses you. If you have not left me a rate and review for the podcast, please consider doing this. It takes 30 seconds and it helps me understand what's resonating as well as other people find the podcast. All right, with that, bye.